Let's talk about fighting. Let's talk about teaching and learning how to fight and getting that education to people most in need. I actually want to start, though, with let's do a little thought experiment. I want you to be aware of your reaction to the suggestion I'm getting ready to make. I want you to be honest with yourself. On Monday, let's assume you can make the time. On Monday, I want you to come to my school, and we're going to start teaching you how to fight. So just let yourself sit with that for a second. You're going to be punching and kicking and doing all the things. How many of you said yes? That are not my students already? How many of you said, yeah, maybe, but I don't think I'll fit in. I don't think it'll work for me very well? How many of you were in some range of like, to absolutely not? Yeah, a few more hands. So, I've had this bee in my bonnet for years now about making sure that everybody learns how to fight. I think it's an important skill that everybody needs to have. And I try to be inclusive about it. But how am I supposed to do that when most of you all somehow exclude yourselves before we even have a chance to meet? Now what? Well, one of my first approaches was to kind of broaden the definition of fighting and self-defense. With the hope of also broadening the appeal and making kind of success more attainable for folks. For example, most of you in the audience are going to be more likely to die of maybe diabetes or heart disease than you ever would of a knife attack. So is it not reasonable to suggest that just by coming in and breaking a sweat and getting a little work in, that you're improving your self-defense? And that you're learning to fight? And that your fight's going to be a little different than a knife fight? Yeah, maybe. There's a lot of people out there that suffer from so much anxiety and or depression that just the act of making themselves walk through that front door a couple of times a week is a fight. And by doing that, they're improving their self-defense and their ability to fight. So by doing that, it makes it more accessible. People start to understand and think about fighting differently. But that doesn't get everybody. There's still a huge group of people that exclude themselves. What's interesting, though, is that they can be even easier to get to sometimes than the people that I had to kind of remold the definition of fighting for. So what does that mean? Let's talk about saying yes first. So just about anybody that's been involved in martial arts, this is probably a huge tenet of that martial art. Probably no more so than the two that I practice and coach, Krav Maga and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. They're supposed to be for everybody. Come in, Krav Maga is it for everybody. It doesn't matter what your size is, it's for everybody. Same for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But you take one step into the school, and you very quickly realize in most places, this isn't everybody. It's this guy. I don't look like that guy. Is that guy out there? And what I found over the years is schools are filled with students that are generally easy to coach. A couple of athletes walk in, you start putting them to work, and they start, whoa, they're amazing. I must be an excellent coach. And it starts reinforcing. And I start giving attention to those people that are really good. And those people that aren't so good and maybe a little bit more difficult to coach, they notice. And they leave. They go spend their time somewhere else. And pretty soon the gym's filled with these guys. So saying yes is about deciding to do the hard thing sometimes and accepting challenges. Let me give you an example. There's tons of examples. I'll give you a recent and relatively extreme example. About 8 months ago, right as I was finishing class, a young man walks in up front, kind of waiting to talk to somebody. I get class finished up, I walk out. I introduce myself, and I very quickly determine that he's got some visual impairment. And he starts telling me about, well, I used to wrestle in high school, and I'm really interested in doing some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm like, oh, well, that'd be great. I think you'll be really successful in that. And he's like, but would you also be willing to teach a legally blind guy to kickbox? Sure. Yeah. I don't know that I'm going to be able to get you a UFC contract next year. But yeah, absolutely. I'll teach you. I'll coach you. Let's do it. And sometimes that's all that people need when they walk in. I got bad knees. I just had a hip replacement. Can you coach me? Sure. I'm out of shape or overweight or I haven't done this or that. I've been sitting in the house for 2 years because of the pandemic. Can you coach me? Absolutely, yes. But saying no can be just as important. And some people need to hear that instead. About 3 years ago, we received an email. It was very brief and to the point. It said something to the effect of, I couldn't clearly see a statement on your website about it, so I wanted to ask. I am a trans woman interested in training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Will my presence be an issue? No. No, of course it won't. She actually likes to tell the story because apparently I wrote a really aggressive email back. I said, hell no, it won't be an issue. I found out a few months later that she sent that same email out to every jiu-jitsu school in the city, of which there are quite a few. She got 2 emails back. One of them was ours, and one of them said, I don't think it will be an issue. That's tough to read. I don't think. I'm running the school. I set the tone. I decide if it's going to be an issue or not. And interestingly enough, that implies a whole other no to people. There may be some people that wanted to train at my place where her presence would have been an issue. Guess what? No. No. So, this is ultimately the takeaway. If you are a leader or somehow running an organization where you are in any way interested in being inclusive, stop worrying about trying to be for everybody. You will never achieve it. You can't do it. It's a fool's errand. Instead of thinking about trying to be the place for everybody, be the place for anybody. It's much easier to attain. Now that's not, and like we say, it's not for everybody. People walk into our place all the time. It's not for me. That's okay. But we're for anybody. So that's ultimately the goal. Inclusivity is about being for anybody. Thank you. Oh, and I'll see you Monday.